Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to another episode of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host, Sean Winter. Today on the show, we have Cameron Mitchell, founder and CEO of Cameron Mitchell Restaurants. Before diving into that conversation with him, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
With over 120 years of teaching experience, the Cordon Bleu is well established as the global leader in culinary, wine, and hospitality education. The Cordon Bleu offers a wide range of programs for aspiring professionals to become part of a great tradition of excellence. Earn the credentials that will set you apart from the competition in a demanding and changing industry. Learn more at cordonbleu.edu/USA. And with that, Chris, looking into Cameron Mitchell's background, goodness gracious, this guy went from nothing, very, very, very humble beginnings to a massive national restaurant group. It's just, reading about it is incredible. I can only imagine what it's going to be like talking to him.
Yeah, I know they've created an amazing culture that really puts their employees first, and they have retained so much great talent, and they've been able to spread so wide. I know they were able to sell certain brands to Ruth Steakhouse for who knows how much, and has just been really successful. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in and learn some insights from a real industry veteran. So what do you say we hop in?
Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Cameron Mitchell, how's it going today?
Very good. Another good day.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. For those folks that maybe that rare few that are listening that haven't eaten in one of the restaurants or might not be familiar with you and the brand, maybe you could talk a bit about what you guys are up to, but more importantly, what's kind of gotten you here, some of your past growing up in childhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. So we have 55 food service operations today, restaurants and catering operations across the country. We're coast to coast from Beverly Hills to New York and up and down the eastern seaboard. And we have 5 restaurants under development that will open in the next 9 months or so. So we'll be up to 60 food service operations and a little under 5,000 associates. And we have 16 different brands within our portfolio, and we have 4 pillars to our company, we call them. So one is our company called CMP, which is our Cameron Mitchell Premier Events, which is our catering arm. And then we have our second one is what we call our specialty restaurants, which is all of our 1 or 2 off restaurants that we have in our portfolio. And then our third pillar is our Rusty Bucket Corner Tavern. We have 23 of those in about 5 states. It's a casual dining concept, little neighborhood, 4,500 square foot corner tavern concept. And then our fourth pillar of our company is our Ocean Prime brand, which is our national brand and our national expansion. And we have 14 of those with 2 more opening up in the next 6 months or so. So that's Cameron Mitchell Restaurants in a nutshell.
And so early on, when you were starting out in your career, what was the ambition? Did you envision this from the start, or did you have other ambitions as you were starting out as a young professional?
Well, I'm actually looking forward to 2020 because I'll celebrate 40 years in the restaurant business at that point. I started out as a junior in high school washing dishes for a steakhouse called Cork and Cleaver, which was a chain at that point in time. And I went through high school. I finished almost last in my class. I was 592 out of 597. And I had a 1.05 GPA. And I was also a senior class president. And I didn't want to go right up to college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was just working in restaurants, living home with mom, working for beer money. And I had kind of a crappy attitude and just was going nowhere. And I did that for about a year, trying to figure out what I want to do. I always thought I'd go to college. I just didn't want to start college without any direction. And so I had been suspended from my job for 3 days for being late. I was working 2 jobs in the restaurant business, and I was at this point in time, $5 an hour fry cook, and I was doing some other stuff in the restaurant business too. And I was 19 years old, and I've been suspended for 3 days. I was on 30 days probation, and I was the laziest guy in the kitchen, and poor attitude, and working for the man, if you will, and so forth. And I'm going nowhere. And I had an epiphany one day. It was on a Friday afternoon during a shift change. This restaurant I was at was basically doing about 1,000 people a day. Very, very busy restaurant, and it's kind of pandemonium at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at shift change. And I was actually scheduled to work that night as a host also, so I had to go home and change after that and get cleaned up and come back. And, managers were barking orders. The AM shift was trying to leave, and the PM shift was trying to come on, and employees were trying to get some food to eat. And, the restaurant was half full. The bar was already packed. And it was just pandemonium, and I had an epiphany. Time froze. I looked across the line, and I said, I love this business. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I'm going to be in the restaurant business. So I worked my double shift, and it was just clear as a bell to me at that point in time. I worked my double shift, and I went home that night, and I wrote out my goals. So I'm 19 years old at the time, and I said I was going to go to the Culinary Institute of America. I heard about that. It's the Harvard of Culinary Schools, and I was going to graduate from there, become executive chef by the time I was 23, general manager by the time I was 24, regional director by the time I was 26, VP of operations by the time I was 30, and president of a restaurant company by the time I was 35, never even thinking about my own. And so I woke my mom up at 1 a.m. I showed her my goals, and she was ecstatic, and went back to work the next morning. And on that Saturday, I'd gone 180-degree turn from the laziest guy in the kitchen to the hardest working guy in the kitchen, from probably the worst attitude in the kitchen to the best attitude in the kitchen, and working for my future and for my career. So, and it just all turned around literally overnight like that. So that's really how I got started. So those were my original goals. And then later on, I determined I was going to need to start my own restaurant company. I had a similar epiphany when I was 28, and that's how I came to realize I was going to start Cameron Mitchell Restaurants at that point in time.
For anyone listening that's worked in a restaurant before, that shift change time, everyone's, the waitresses are trying to do their checkouts and give the managers their money, and people ordering food. It's like you said, it's complete chaos. It's funny that was kind of the impetus for that switch turning on in your head. What might be some advice for you as you think about maybe some of your employees? Yeah, I'm sure, I know you guys have a great culture, but sometimes folks start to kind of fall behind, or maybe don't quite have the same drive they might have when you hired them, to help them maybe turn that switch on.
Well, I talk to everybody I can talk to about this. I've always had goals my entire life, and I believe in the power of goal setting, and people need to do that and have that positive mental attitude. I wouldn't have had that epiphany if I wasn't searching. I was already searching for what did I want to do. I was already asking those hard questions and contemplating within myself, and so that allowed me to actually, see the vision, when it happened, and so and had that clarity. And so I always encourage people just to dream big and to keep pushing forward, and positive mental attitude, and good things happen to people that way. It's not, you can't go anywhere with a negative attitude. It's going to always hold you back your entire life.
And so when you look back, what was the catalyst that happened where you then decided you were going to venture out on your own? That's not an easy step for people, especially in the restaurant business or hospitality or F&B. It's not easy to step out on your own and do something and be successful. Mind you, now, 25 years that you all are approaching. So what was that catalyst that you said, you know what, I'm stepping out on my own? What was that time period?
Yeah, so I went to the culinary. I got turned down at first when I applied because my grades, so I had to go take a math and English course at local college here and reapply, and I got A's and reapplied and got accepted. And I graduated and I came out at 22, and I took a sous chef position at a local startup restaurant company here in Columbus. They had one restaurant, and we're opening up their second one. And then I became executive chef. This is a white tablecloth top 10 restaurant at their original restaurant when I was 23. And then I became general manager of that restaurant when I was 24. And then we grew some more restaurants. And by the time we had 4, I got promoted to running the front of the house operations of that small group. And at that point in time, I was 26. That was my goal, to be a regional director by then. And so there I was running multi-unit restaurants. And so now I'm 28. We're up to 6 restaurants. And this small company is owned by some wealthy local business people. And it was a hip pocket business for them. They were putting restaurants in their developments and so forth. But they weren't really in the restaurant business per se. And my boss, our operating partner, was an old Chuck Muir restaurant guy. And he was kind of a micromanager, and I was starting to get frustrated with him. And my goal always at this point in time was to be president of a restaurant company. And so the combination of this company not growing and not being totally restaurant focused by the owners was a problem for me. And secondly, with my boss being increasingly difficult to work with because he was a micromanager and the company was kind of outgrowing him, started to cause some frustration for me. And at 28, I realized, that this may not be it for me for, this company. And so because I was searching for what I was going to do next, I was in a local restaurant company. So I started hitting my head on the ceiling effectively. So then I was at this local restaurant, chef-owned restaurant one night on a Friday night. And the place was packed. It was about 9 o'clock. I'd just gotten off work, and I went over to meet a friend for a drink. And, dinner rush was over, and the chef was out working in the dining room and talking to a bunch of guests. And it just hit me. I looked at him and I said, I'm going to start my own restaurant company. It's exactly what I'm going to do. And I had that moment of clarity again within 30 seconds, had a completely clear vision of what my future was going to bring. And so I ended up leaving that company in 6 weeks. July 11th, 1992, I turned 29. And then I went to work on and starting my company. And the first thing I did in my 1-bedroom apartment, I had about less than 10 grand in my name. And first thing I did is I wrote our company culture and values. I spent about 3 weeks studying and reading, and I've been in the restaurant business now at this point in time about 12 years, and was trying to figure out what kind of company I want to build with what kind of company cultures and values, and I got that done. Then I set about the course of getting my first restaurant started. And so it was never for me about building a restaurant or having my own restaurant. That was never the goal. My goal since I was 19 was to be president of a restaurant company, and so I wanted to build multiple restaurants, and that's how you have a company. And so I spent it took me 14 months to open our doors. So I left July 11th, 1992, and we opened up October 5th of 1993. My first deal fell through. The landlord went bankrupt, and I had to start over, and it was brutal. It was a long, grueling 14 months, but we made it. And since then, we've opened about 90 restaurants since then, and Cameron Mitchell restaurants. So backtracking a bit, I wrote that company culture and those values out, and then I set about the business of building a company wrapped around that company culture and values. And I'm still doing that now here 26 plus years later.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. And real quick, Chris, before you jump in, I love hearing those they were kind of offhanded remarks, but they're just so powerful to me, at least. That stands out. How you said it took 14 months. I can only imagine how grueling that was to endure that time frame. The first deal falling through, the landlord going bankrupt. I mean, for anybody that aspires to be where you are right now, they have to know everyone goes through those hardships. And I love how you shared that. Thank you.
Oh, it was painful. It was one of the darkest moments of my life. And I have a picture on my desk of myself rolling change. I just literally down to $70 to buy some groceries. I'd given up my apartment, moved back into my mom's condo. She had fortunately got remarried and was living in Florida at the time with her new husband in his condo down there. And so she still had hers. And then I was completely broke, and I had borrowed a bunch of money from my brother to help me live off of, because I hadn't worked in this time frame. And then as I maxed out my credit cards, my savings was all gone, and so I ended up closing my deal with funding with my partners in March, or early March, late February of '93. And at that point, that's the week before that is when I was down to my last $70. And I was able to write myself a check. We opened up the account. It was $400,000 I had raised for my first restaurant. And I opened up the account on Monday morning after I got my final last few checks in. And I was able to write myself back a check for $7,000 that I had spent on business plans and copying. I dropped out of typing class, so I'd have someone type all my stuff and all my letters for me. And so I charged that $7,000 off to pre-opening expenses for the new restaurant. And I lived off that $7,000 until we opened in October 5th of 1993. And so it was, dark, lean times. Let's put it that way.
Now, did you, in that moment, I know you had, whether it was intentional or not, I know you had like the dishwashing job, and then it sounded like you were a line cook. Then you were also moonlighting as a host. Mm-hmm. I think one of the most valuable things people can do in this industry is get as much experience as possible doing different things. So when they are ready to try and branch out on their own, they have the different understandings of what needs to be done to be successful. I'm curious, in that 14 months, was there ever a point where you said, you know what, I guess I'm going to have to go back and get a job or anything along that lines?
Yeah, I mean, when my first deal fell through, so it started to go south as we were trying to finalize the lease in December, end of December. And so towards the end of December, the whole world shuts down, and, I'm out of money, and this landlord goes bankrupt and comes to services in the middle of January and says, listen, I can't do a deal with you. I apologize. And I had to send all my partners their checks back and find a new place and get a new lease done and do a new legal offering to solicit partnerships. And I had a do or die meeting with my partners. My lawyer buddy and a construction buddy were helping me out. We had a do or die meeting. And it was, if we weren't going to get funding and wasn't going to make it happen on this Friday, it was going to be the end of the road for me. So I got very, very, very close. And I had one partner come through. I was dead in the water. I needed to raise $400,000. I had $360,000 raised. I was dead in the water coming up to this Friday meeting. And I had one partner I went to see the Hail Mary last minute. He wrote me a check for $30,000, additional $30,000, and got me to $390,000. And I go into the meeting with $390,000 worth of checks. This is the same week I'm rolling change to buy groceries. And my one construction partner buddy of mine calls up two friends and gets them each to put $5,000 in. And I get those checks late afternoon on that Friday, so it's too late to go to the bank and cash and open up my account because I couldn't break escrow until I'd raised the entire $400,000 according, with the legal offering and the business plan. So that's when I went Monday morning to the bank and opened up the account, and that's when I wrote myself back a check for $7,000 and was able to live off that. So it was all the way down to the wire, and like I said, it was just very, very difficult. And I had a couple young people come see me just the other day. Want to do it. One of them works for me, and they want to do their own restaurant, and they were woefully unprepared and really had not thought out a lot of things. And hopefully I steered them in the right direction to pause for a time being and try to get some things organized. But I was blessed because, I started at 16, so I'm 28, 29. So I had 12, 13 years of experience. I'd gone to the Culinary Institute of America. My job out of school was just beautiful because I started as sous chef, became executive chef, became general manager, became operating partner, and ran the operations of the front of the house, and got to see these restaurants built from scratch and experience that very close to the center. And so I had a good pedigree and had a good experience, and that prepared me to go out and get started. And I think about what I know now at 55 compared to where I was 30 when we finally opened the first restaurant. It was, I had a good, even though I had a good background, a good education, obviously now 25 more years of experience, I know a tremendous amount more about the restaurant business. So it's a lifelong business. It's a lifelong learning. And I always encourage people to, before they step out and want to try to do their own thing, to make sure they're prepared and make sure they've got the experience and try to avoid some of the major pitfalls that people have. So I was blessed and I was lucky both and a lot of hard work.
I'm curious about the time period when you started to scale and expand, because the chefs or the food entrepreneurs that I connect with, they never really, most of them never want to just have one place. They want to have several. They want to have maybe a national brand. They want to scale, they want to grow, they want to expand. So I'm curious, I guess it's two parts. When did you start expanding or scaling to having multiple concepts or ventures? And then how did you effectively line yourself up to do that?
Yeah, so, it's one thing to open up a restaurant, and that's a huge hurdle, a huge battle in its own right. And it's another thing to build multiple restaurants and multiple brands across multiple states and across the country. So entirely different skill sets and entirely different needs and requirements. But so I opened up my first restaurant, a little 100-seat restaurant on the northwest side of town. And we were packed from day one. And I mean, before I even got my first P&L, my first month of operation, I started looking for the second, because to me, it was all about building a company. That was been my goals and being president of my company. And so we opened up our second restaurant 11 months later. And then our third was another year after that. And our fourth was another year after that. And then a year after that, we built two. And then a year after that, we built two more. And a year after that, we built two more. So we ended up having 10 restaurants in 7 years, from 93 to 2000. And that was incredibly difficult. I never worked harder in my life than when I had 2 or 3 restaurants, because we had no infrastructure. I did everything. I wore every single hat, basically. And then I started getting some good people on our team and started to build a leadership team. And that's where, it started to change a little bit, and we were able to navigate through a lot of those early pitfalls, but it was very, very challenging to do that. And then, then you get on another challenge. So we had 10 restaurants in Columbus at that point by the turn of the century. Then to start going out of town is another whole different ball game and a whole different learning skill set. And so, and we've made a lot of mistakes along the way doing that. So it's been quite a journey, that's for sure.
As it relates to different concepts, I know you said around 15 different concepts, and I'm not sure the exact number, but around maybe a dozen or so different states, maybe more. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to kind of know the decision-making process as it relates to concepts. Maybe like the ideation of them, how you decide what to implement, and then maybe what to also you say no to, and then also maybe kind of where.
Mm-hmm. So, I've always idolized Rich Melman out of Chicago, Let's Entertain You Restaurants, and running 60 restaurants of one brand is one thing. Running 60 restaurants with 16 different brands is a whole entirely different matter. And, it's much harder. And to a certain extent, you're crazy to do that. But we loved, we still do love creating concepts and developing restaurants. And we created a concept called Mitchell's Fish Market in 1998. And we built 19 of them. And then we ended up selling them in 3 of our steakhouses to Ruth Chris in 2008, 10 years later for $92 million. And so and now Ocean Prime is our national brand. We have 23. We have a couple other restaurants now that are in our specialty group that we want to open out of town and think they might have legs. And so those developing the specialty restaurant concepts is we don't ever build one thinking we're going to build more. We just build one. And if it really works out really well, we might try a second one. And if that really works out really well, we might try a third. And that's how these brands we've launched out of the specialty group, all of our brands have come out of the specialty group and serves as kind of our farm team. And some concepts are better than others. And, one of the biggest things I've learned over the years, I had no idea about what restaurant branding meant in creating brands and all the work that goes into that. And now I've got a much better idea about that. But it's very challenging to create a brand that you can grow and build multiple in multiple locations.
And on that last point, you said you learned a lot about branding. What do you think is the most challenging part of trying to brand a restaurant, especially across state lines or regions, what have you?
Yeah, so, when you think about restaurant branding, like my first restaurant I opened up was called Cameron's American Bistro. What the hell is that? What's an American bistro? And, what defines that? Nothing. It's just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff, right? And it's kind of a smart, nice atmosphere, and, we had a bar and, all that stuff and, kind of an eclectic menu, but it's really not that well defined where, we had Mitchell's Fish Market, which was a fresh seafood concept, a daily fresh menu, et cetera. Then it becomes a little more pointed. But, branding, everything in the brand has to be contiguous and congruent, whether it be could be the font, it could be the menu. Your guests have to be able to tell people what it is. They have to be able to articulate what it is. It has to, radiate people. Certain things radiate better with others, like Ocean Prime, our Ocean Prime brand. We didn't have sushi on that menu until 3 or 4 years ago. Now we have it company-wide, and that has just augmented the brand. And so we, everything we do is about augmenting the brand. You have to understand what the brand DNA is, and sometimes that brand DNA does not translate well to guests, so it has to be reconfigured. And so it's just 200 items, with the menu, the look, the uniforms, the ambiance, the lighting, the music, the rest of the decor, the china, everything has to fit that brand exactly. And the more you can align all those items, the stronger the brand has to be. And we've conducted, exhaustive hundreds of hours of research with our people and our guests and on what they want, what drives them to the brand, what drives that brand further. And so it's just a constant work. But once you get a great brand, then the results are extremely powerful, and that's where the real fortunes, I guess, in the restaurant business are made is by people who develop brands that end up being the Cheesecake Factories of the world, or Ruth Chris, or Morton's, or whatever. So that's where when you can actually tap into a brand like that, that's where the real money in the restaurant business is made.
And not to get too meta, but then there's also like the bigger brand of Cameron Mitchell restaurants, and then those brands are brands within that. So then it all has to, at the end of the day, align with the ultimate brand of Cameron Mitchell restaurants.
Right.
Maybe you could talk a bit about, I know you had those, you said you spent those first couple weeks getting that culture aspect of it right, which we all know is so, so important. Maybe you can talk a bit about, and I know you dive into it with the book as well, but you can talk a bit about the culture you guys strive to maintain and have for your employees.
So let me dovetail on the last point, and that was, the Cameron Mitchell restaurant. Cameron Mitchell itself is the brand. So, it might say Ocean Prime, but at the bottom of it says a Cameron Mitchell restaurant, or Marcella's. At the bottom, it'll say a Cameron Mitchell restaurant. So Cameron Mitchell itself has become the brand of quality. When you go to a Cameron Mitchell restaurant, you're going to get a quality dining experience. You're going to get great service and hospitality, and the ambiance of the restaurant is incredible, and it's going to be a good experience. That's the brand itself with Cameron Mitchell Restaurant. So all of our restaurants have to operate within that. And when we run the multi-brands, the 16 different brands, what I call the internal side of the business, the chassis and the engine of the car, if you will, is all the same. It's our same company culture, our same values, our same register systems, same accounting systems, HR practices, all that is done the same with all of our restaurants. What's different is what I call the exterior, the chassis, the window dressing, and that's what defines the brand. Is it Italian, or is it steak, or is it Asian, or is it fine dining, or whatever? But they all basically run the same way internally. So when we talk about our company culture and values, which is the number one thing that all of our people in all of our restaurants across the country share, and that's what I wrote out 25 plus almost 26 years ago now, over 26 years ago, and that is. I think I'll just take you through it. I think there's 5 basic questions that not only any restaurant should be able to answer with conviction and authority, but I think any business itself. And first one of those is what do we want to be? Any business needs to know what they want to be, and we want to be an extraordinary restaurant company. And by simply definition, that's the opposite of ordinary. All right, we got to say, who are we? Well. We're great people delivering genuine hospitality. Everybody knows what great people are. We all have great people in our lives. Delivering means someone's receiving, genuine from the heart, and we all know hospitality is treating guests like we would treat people in our own home. So that's how we define ourselves, all 5,000 of us, great people delivering genuine hospitality. And what's our mission, right? And our mission is to thrive with both cultural and fiscal responsibility. And that's what we define that as a 51-49 relationship. So job number one, I want to be a restaurant company that's around 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years, long after I'm in a big restaurant in the sky. And in order to do that, we need to be a values-driven organization. So our number one goal is to maintain our culture and values. And job number one right behind it, not call it number 1A, is to make a profit, make a damn good profit. But we'll never hold profit above our culture and values. We'll leave $1 on the table and never sacrifice our culture and values. And then the fourth question, I think, people have to ask, any business has to ask is what is your role? So, we have different job descriptions all throughout the company, but all 5,000 of us have the same role in the company, and that's to make raving fans of the 5 groups of people we do business with. First and foremost, our fellow associates, our guests, our purveyors, our partners in our community. We believe that if you have any interaction with Cameron Mitchell restaurants, you're going to belong to one of those 5 constituencies. So if we make raving fans out of those 5 groups of people, we'll make raving fans out of everybody we come in contact with our company. And then finally, so if we think about it, we've asked, who are we? What do we want to be? What is our mission? What is our, and finally what is our goal? Now, we know businesses have goals, daily, weekly, hourly, monthly, you name it. They come and go, they change all the time. And hundreds and thousands of goals. But we have one goal that stays the same 24/7, 365, and that's to be better today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we are today. So simply put, you cannot be better at anything today than you were yesterday and better tomorrow than you are today if you don't work at it and if you don't constantly try to improve what you're doing. So, and it also becomes our insurance policy. If we're better today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we are today, by virtue of that alone, tomorrow will be more of a successful restaurant company than we are today. So those 5 questions. Then we have 8 core values. I'm not going to go all through 8 of them. We have them in our book and it's all coming out, but the only one I want to talk about is our number 1 core value, and that is our associates come first. And we don't call them employees, we call them associates. And, again, here I am, CEO of a restaurant company. A lot of restaurant companies, USA, the guest comes first. And we don't believe in that. In fact, I'm even brazen enough to say I don't even think we have a direct relationship with our guests. We have a direct relationship with our people. We work with them day in and day out. Guests come see us sometimes once a day, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, sometimes once and never, unfortunately. And I hope that doesn't happen very often. But we don't have a direct relationship with those guests, especially the company doesn't. Our people do. So we look at it in terms of, I look at it as a triangular relationship. Our number 1 goal and value is to take care of our people. Our associates come first. If we take care of our people will take care of our guests, and our guests will take care of our company. So it's a triangular relationship. And then finally, the last piece of our culture and values is the answer is yes, what's the question? And that's an attitudinal thing. It's not, doesn't mean you can bring a gun to work, doesn't mean you can sexually harass your workmate, doesn't mean you can steal from us, et cetera. But the answer is yes, what's the question is an attitude. And if we can do it, we will. I mean, how many times people come in in restaurants, can I have this or can I have that? And the restaurant says no, or the chef says no, I'm not going to do that. It'll ruin the integrity of the dish, whatever. And it's crazy. Or can I sit at this table instead of that one? No, I'm sorry, it's already taken, et cetera. So yes requires action. And we define that. We had a defining moment in that it's always been since day one. Yes is the answer. What's the question? But in 2002, I was with my two young sons, my wife, and my mother and father at a local restaurant, and I wanted to order my son a grilled cheese sandwich, and they wouldn't do it. We don't have grilled cheese. I said, well, okay, I ordered a club sandwich, hold the turkey, ham, lettuce, tomato, mayo, middle slice of bread. And I said, if you can take what's left and saute in a pan for me. She said, okay. And I want to get a chocolate milkshake. And she said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that either. We don't have chocolate milkshakes. We always have a big Haagen-Dazs, like it's a quart of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. It's a huge milkshake. It's way too big for your little 4-year-old son. I have her ask her manager, and her manager shakes her head, no, can't do it. So I asked the gal to come over to my table, and I said, can why can't I get a chocolate milkshake for my son? She goes, well, we pre-portion the ice cream in the back, and if we, serve a little bit of ice cream for your son, what we do with the rest of it, throw off our inventory. I've been in the restaurant business all my life. We don't pre-portion the ice cream in the back. And so I said, okay. I said, can I get a chocolate milk? And now she's great people delivering genuine hospitality. She says, yes. I said, well, okay. Starts to walk away. She'd be happy to get that for me. And I said, hold on a second. Before you go, I said, on the menu, they had a warm carrot cake dessert and a warm brownie dessert. It said, a la mode $2.95. I said, what's a la mode mean? She said, well, it's a scoop of ice cream to go with the dessert. I said, great. Can I have an order of a la mode to go with my chocolate milk? And if you could whip those two up in a blender for me, that'd be great. And she chastised me and said, that'll be expensive, sir. I said, I'm okay. So my wife's pissed, and I told you they don't take care of kids here. Anyways, I'm speaking to a 500-person business group. About a week later, I'm telling the story of Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, so the answer is yes. What's the question? And I relay this milkshake story. And about a week after that, a gal comes up to me in the street and says, hey, my husband heard you speak at the Hyatt. It was great. And she went to one of your restaurants, tried to order a chocolate milkshake from the bar, and they wouldn't do it for him. And I it's like she punched me in the gut right there in the middle of the street. So, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always, chicken little, the sky's always falling, right? So I go into our Monday morning leadership meeting, and I'm fired up. What do our people understand? The answer is yes. What's the question? Our culture as a radiated company as well as we think, and we got to do more. And so we made the milkshake the icon of hospitality in our company. We created Flo, our waitress, with the server with a big beaming smile, the chocolate milkshake on, and we give chocolate milkshake pins out for years of service. We have we go on and on, and it's become the symbol of hospitality. The answer is yes in our company. So now, today, we make thousands and thousands and thousands of chocolate milkshakes a year. Every person that starts with the company for a 4-hour orientation to our company culture and values gets a chocolate milkshake made for them. We start every major meeting, every leadership conference, every president's roundtable, every all staff meeting, every meeting we have in the company, we start with chocolate milkshakes for everybody to do a toast to great people delivering genuine hospitality. And the answer is yes. What's the question? So we drive that culture and drive that point home across the board, and now the milkshake has become that vehicle for that. So that's really our company culture in a nutshell. And this the Cameron Mitchell Restaurants is a company built by its people for its people, and that's pretty unique, I think, out there.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that I had was, how do you get people to adopt or buy into a culture? But I feel like I have the answer in some respects, and you can elaborate, because number one, when you're trying to get anybody to buy into something, you really need to lead with a story. You gotta get them involved into it. You have that. You did that. And from a culture standpoint, you gotta ingrain things into just the daily actions. And it sounds like everything that you all do points back to that kind of story and that mantra that people can really wrap their hands around. And you all do that constantly, which I think is brilliant. So if that's essentially how you get people to really buy into the culture, then great. But if you have any additional ways or thoughts about how do you really get people to buy in, love to hear those.
Well, it's in my book. So I have a book that's coming out October 5th for our 25-year anniversary. The book's title is The Answer is Yes, What's the Question? And it's a two-parter. it's the Horatio Alger story from, high school dropout, runaway, last in my class, to, building nearly 100 restaurants across the country, a $4 million a year company. That's the first part. The second part is all about our company culture and values and how that has translated into our success and how that works within our company. So, but in a nutshell, there's just some things to think about here. The associates come first, right? So the associates are the most important thing in our company. So our people. So we're closed 7 major holidays plus Super Bowl Sunday. So we're closed 8 days out of the year. Why? Because, I don't want to work on Christmas. I don't want to work on Thanksgiving. I don't want to work New Year's Day. Stupid to be open Super Bowl Sunday because we don't do any business. So why are we open there? So each one of those days, all of our associates get an extra day off that week. So all of our managers get 3 days off that week. And I want those times are to be with family. So I say if we can't make money 357 days out of the year, then we shouldn't be in business. But I see these companies that open up all the time, every single day. It's crazy to me. So there's just examples like that, in our company, I always tell people, all you have to do is look to your right or look to your left, and you see someone's building their career with their company. They've doubled, tripled, quadrupled their salary since they started, and or more. So it's people know in our company, they know we care about them. How about this? Everybody knows, right? Here's the old deal. Susie, the server, or John, the server, says, "Hey, on Monday or Tuesday, can I get? My parents are coming in town Saturday. Spur of the moment, can I get Saturday night off?" What's the universal answer? The universal answer is sure if you get your shift covered, right? We say that. Everybody says that. We just take it a step further. We say, Susie or John, hey, try to get your shift scheduled if you covered. If you can't, let me know and I'll take care of it. Plan on taking Saturday night off. And that's the big difference. And so, they're not calling in sick on Saturday. They're working even harder to get their shift covered because they just respect the way we're treating them, and they love us and so forth. And we know we care about them, et cetera. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, we call them up because we need, we're short staff. We had 2 calls, and they sure come in and help us. It's all based on the golden rule of two-way street management. Our associates were, our restaurant in Naples was closed 10 days last year for the hurricane. Well, we couldn't make up all of it, but, we passed the hat around the office and around the company, and we ended up, each associate got $800 for that closed period, for that time we were closed, Most companies would say, sorry, tough break, I can go on and on and on and on about how we take care of our people. And in essence, then they take care of our guests because they know we care about them, so they care about us and they care about our guests. And then our guest takes care of our company by coming back time and time again.
That's beautiful. So Cameron, in kind of wrapping up here, I know there's so much great advice you've given us over the last 45 minutes or so, plus what you have in the book. Any kind of final kind of thoughts, advice for those that are maybe starting out at 16 or 19 or 22 that you might have for them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things I like to say is, great restaurateuring is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And, we're just very, very intense and very, very passionate about doing things right and doing things the right way. I learned long ago with my old job, you can't cut corners. Once you start cutting one corner, before you know it, you've lost your entire way, your path. And, I always tell people, self-study. I self-studied all the time. In culinary school, I'd stay home 2 nights out of the week. I worked every weekend in New York City. I drove back and forth every day, every Saturday and Sunday to New York City to work. And so I had 4 other nights a week. And so 2 nights I studied, or 2 nights I went out and played. And then 2 nights I stayed home and studied. No, I do my homework, but I also studied, all the trade magazines, all the trade journals, read books, et cetera, to learn the craft. The restaurant business is a lifelong learning. I'm still a student of the industry today. And so I tell people, you work hard, work with balance, work with purpose, positive attitude, It's how your feet hit the ground in the morning and how you carry yourself throughout the day. And self-study and emulate other leaders and other people that are doing it right. And you can be successful. But if you think it's easy, then, you're crazy, because it's just, I've seen way too many people try to not do it right, or take shortcuts, or not get the experience, or, do it half-assed. And that is a sure recipe for failure.
Great advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the book is going to be out in October, and that is approaching your 25th year anniversary with Cameron Mitchell. Just my last question, how does that feel, 25 years, when you think about it, that the gravity of that?
Well, it kind of sucks. I'm in my fourth quarter of my career. I'm 55. I'm starting to, aches and pains, and I love this business. I haven't gone to work I quote tell my wife I'm going to work, but I haven't gone to work and I can't tell you how long. I love what I do. So, I tell people I'm in the fourth quarter of my career, and that's kind of sad. That's kind of a bummer. I love having the experience. I love the success we've had, and I've loved the journey and all that, but I don't want it to come to an end. And so even on my desk right now, I have a legal pad with about 15, 20 items on it. It says fourth quarter goals. And so, I'm still setting goals today, still goal oriented and so forth. And I want to close out my career, but I in style and in the right way and so forth. But I'm telling you, just the whole thought of closing out my career, is not too fun. So, but it is inevitable. It's the time marches on. So, yeah, so it's cool in one way and great, and I feel very proud, and it's been a long journey, but, I'm getting a little tired. 40 years in the restaurant business is, takes its toll. But on the same token, anytime soon.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing some wisdom with all our listeners today.
My pleasure. I'm happy to do it, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thanks. Same to you.
Out there, okay? Lots of success.
Thank you. All right. So that was our conversation with Cameron Mitchell. Sean, what were your takeaways?
I had this gut-wrenching moment listening to him talk about how he got down to $70 for groceries, maxed out credit cards, borrowed money, and then was approaching a Friday when it was literally do or die if they didn't get this money from the partners because of the first deal falling through. But if you didn't get this money, they were going to be dead in the water, maybe have to go back to jobs, not follow his dream. And in the 11th hour, I think he said late Friday afternoon, he got the last 2 checks from 2 buddies of a friend that friend called in the 11th hour and was able to raise that money. I mean, if all of that didn't happen down to the last day, Cameron Mitchell Restaurants would not be here. I mean, hearing about him, I'm sure he would have found another way. Maybe it would have taken a little bit longer, but goodness gracious, it was gut-wrenching to hear that. I can only imagine what his life and world was like. But my takeaway is that to go after something that you truly want, that you truly desire, just because you want it, it doesn't mean that the universe is going to give it to you. It doesn't mean that the doors are just going to open up and say, here you go. You got to fight for it. And a lot of people that we talk to that are highly successful have absolutely fought. They've clawed tooth and nail to get to where they wanted to go. And it's just another one of those stories. And I absolutely loved hearing that. What about you?
Yeah, I almost felt like I was in his shoes and have been in similar shoes with trying to open up the restaurant and everything. But yeah, it definitely was a gut check moment. I think it speaks a lot for his vision and what he was looking to do with restaurants and his career. And I look also kind of in looking back, towards the end of the conversation, he was talking about, at this stage in his career, he's looking to give back more and to be the mentor for people and the coach. And now that he's already been able to do that for himself, I think we all get to a certain point in our career where we've accomplish certain things, and then it's our responsibility to leave the people behind us in a better place as well, and giving them the tools and the resources and the knowledge that we wish we would have had earlier on for ourselves. So great guy. I loved it. I look forward to reading the book, and just can't say enough great things about what we had to talk about with him. So definitely let us know what you think about Cameron Mitchell's conversation with us. And with that, we're going to leave you with one final quote from Cameron. When you cut corners, before you know it, you've lost your entire way. See you next time.